it's a win-win. You know, the Jazz are trying to rebuild and do some things, so I thought it was great for them to get some of those young talent. Man, they got a lot of draft picks.
Yeah.
And they've got some flexibility to do some cool things moving forward, whether they want to make some trades or they can dangle some carrots, man. I think it's cool. I think it's a win-win for both teams, man. I love how Cleveland plays. Is Kevin Love still on their team?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's great to have those veteran
that
guys,
veteran.
man, that have been there and done that,
Yeah.
man. You need that. Like if a lot of people talk about youth, man, but you better have some veteran guys that can say, hey, man, this is what's going to happen. So I think it's a great trade.
Yeah, absolutely. To you, Savon, like looking at this from both sides, obviously Donovan Mitchell, he's a young rising star. We haven't seen as much consistency from him in the postseason, but now he's going to a Cleveland team that, you know, wants to get back into that consistent, you know, postseason run. How do you think this works for both sides and just like what this new fit will be for him?
Well, before we even talked about the Utah Jazz getting rid of Rudy Gobert, what they're going to do with Donovan Mitchell, what was the next step for Utah Jazz, somebody had to be crazy enough to give them what they wanted for Donovan Mitchell. Why is it always got to be the Cavaliers to do the craziest things when it comes to trying to win? But I think they lost on this one. I think they lost.
Really?
Colin Sexton, I'm huge on him. I was huge on him coming out of Alabama. They didn't offer him the contract. Yes, they have Garland. They have a battered Kevin Love. They have a Jarrett that hasn't lived up to expectations. Excuse me. And a Donovan Mitchell that hasn't lived up to expectations. I don't know what they expect of Donovan Mitchell to do with this squad or do it to themselves, because he's not a CP3 who can go to an OKC team and make them
transform
better. Yeah, transfer the entire basketball team and make it to the playoffs. And you see what happened after CP3 left. They went back to 24 and whatever number that they had. I don't know what they expect Donovan Mitchell, aka Spider, to do. He cannot finish in the postseason. He's the best player when it comes to regular season. He's another James Harden. The list goes on. What do they expect him to do? I think they lost. They gave up way too much for a player that hasn't solidified himself in the postseason. So Garland is a guy is going to be up, but I just don't think they have enough to be like, okay, we can change this around in the next 2-3 years. If you look at the ladder, he's already reached the ceiling to me and Donovan Mitchell. He's already reached that ceiling. It's no other. He's reached his cap. So there's no room for improvement for him in my eyes, especially him having that tenure with the Utah Jazz. So what's next for him? How do I win? You went to a team that hasn't won the championship since LeBron James. So now the expectation is high, but what specific expectations do they see from Donovan Mitchell? I don't see it. I don't know. That's the question I want to answer.
To you, Jeremy, like when you look at what Donovan Mitchell's done in his career so far and just like where he compares against the younger players and the young rising stars in the league, like what do you think about where he's at currently in his career and just what else he can do to, like, you know, Savon feels as though he's hit his limit, but what do you think, what else like do you think he can do going forward?
I think that was a great point. I think they gave up a lot. You know, when I was reading there on ESPN, I just couldn't believe how many draft picks they gave up. I thought that was a lot of picks and a lot of guys to give up. You know, and not. I think that's fairly accurate as far as the ceiling part. You know, you're only listen, man. You can put up all the stats you want during the season, man, but you know, as a basketball coach, people only care about what you do in the playoffs,
right? Yeah.
You know, and they don't care about, well, you didn't have this guy or you didn't have that guy. Don't nobody care about that, man. Like,
no,